Everywhere today, it feels like people are on the streets, clashing with police and demanding change. From economic struggles to political upheaval, the world is restless. But if modern unrest seems chaotic, history reminds us of rebellions so vast, so bloody, that they drowned entire empires in fire and blood. From revolts in Judea in 167 BCE to slave rebellions, these weren't just uprisings. They were wars within nations, where millions perished and the course of history was forever changed. In this video, we'll uncover the 7 bloodiest rebellions ever, from their causes to their historical impact, so stick around because the top 3 will leave you shocked at the casualties and just how people fought to defend their lives and way of being. And we begin with the Boxer Rebellion of 1899 to 1901. By the end of the 19th century, China was suffocating under foreign aggression and internal rot. Into this pressure chamber emerged the Boxers, also known as the Yihequan. The group practiced martial arts and calisthenic rituals in the belief that this made them invulnerable. The roots of their fury ran deep. Following the First Sino-Japanese War, Chinese villagers feared the expansion of foreign spheres of influence and resented Christian missionaries. They formed in northern China around 1899, especially in Shandong, where there were missionary land grabs, Christian converts who ignored local customs and used their power to protect their followers in court. This angered the locals as it disrupted their social norms and eroded their sense of control over Chinese culture. In 1898, North China experienced natural disasters, including the Yellow River flooding and droughts, which Boxers blamed on foreign and Christian influence. Beginning in 1899, the movement spread across Shandong and the North China Plain, destroying foreign properties such as railroads and attacking or murdering Chinese Christians and missionaries. The events came to a head in June 1900, when Boxer fighters, convinced they were invulnerable to foreign weapons, converged on Beijing with the slogan, "Support the Qing government and exterminate the foreigners." The Qing court stood divided. But by June 1900, Empress Dowager Tixi cast her lot with the Boxers, issuing decrees that amounted to a declaration of war against the foreigners. In Beijing, diplomats, missionaries, and Chinese Christians were trapped in the legation quarter. For 55 days, they endured siege, mines, snipers, starvation, and relentless bombardment by both Boxers and Qing forces. But China had awakened the dragon that would devour it. An 8-nation alliance marched in: Britain, Germany, Russia, Japan, France, USA, Italy, Austria, Hungary. Their armies fought through Tianjin and pressed toward Beijing in the Gassili expedition, their modern weaponry cutting through Boxer militias and Qing troops alike. The Qing court fled, the capital was occupied, and China was forced to sign the Boxer Protocol in September 1901, a treaty of humiliation, execution of officials, foreign garrisons in Beijing, and a staggering indemnity of 450 million taels paid over decades. The human cost was brutal. Around 100,000 dead, mission houses burned, Christians slaughtered, and entire regions left in ruins. The dynasty that once ruled half the known world was mortally wounded, its credibility shattered, its authority broken. The Boxer Rebellion was not just a failed uprising. It was China's last desperate gasp before a century of revolution. It exposed the fragility of empire and set the stage for the collapse of millennia-old dynasties in the decades to come. Next, we move to the heart of the ancient world, where one of the most famous rebellions would unfold. Rome, the superpower that enslaved millions. But this time, Rome's greatest threat didn't come from foreign legions or barbarian tribes. It came from within its own borders. In 73 BCE, a Thracian gladiator named Spartacus escaped from a training camp in Capua, leading 70 fellow slaves in a desperate flight for freedom. What began as a prison break soon exploded into a full-scale uprising. As word spread across Italy, slaves, herdsmen, and desperate peasants flocked to Spartacus's banner. In less than a year, his rebel army grew to over 70,000 men, a force large enough to crush several Roman legions sent against them. For 2 years, the unthinkable happened. The armies of Rome were humiliated by their own slaves. Spartacus led with both cunning and charisma, defeating the consuls of Rome and capturing vast territories across southern Italy. There was no single ideology, just one unifying cry: freedom or death. But Rome never forgave humiliation. In 71 BCE, the Senate turned to Marcus Licinius Crassus, the richest man in Rome, who imposed iron discipline and unleashed a scorched earth campaign. Spartacus's forces were cornered and annihilated near the Silurus River. The aftermath was pure vengeance. Over 100,000 rebels slain and 6,000 captured survivors, crucified along the Appian Way, their bodies left to rot as a warning to all who might dream of rebellion. For Rome, order was restored, but at a staggering cost. Now we go almost a century earlier, to 167 BCE in Judea. After Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire around 332, Judea came under Greek rule, and following his death in 323 BCE, his empire was divided. Judea first fell under Ptolemaic Egypt, then the Seleucid Empire after 198 BCE. During this time, Greek culture and language spread through the region, especially among elite Jews. However, traditional Jewish life remained strong, centered on Jerusalem and the Second Temple. Tensions escalated under the Hellenistic Seleucid king Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who ascended to the throne in 175 BCE. He replaced the Jewish high priest Onias III with his brother Jason, and later with Menelaus, both of whom gained power through bribes. This corruption, along with disputes over Hellenization, split Jewish society. In 168 BCE, after suppressing unrest in Jerusalem, Antiochus looted the temple and imposed harsh decrees banning Jewish practices, including circumcision, Sabbath observance, and dietary laws. The temple was rededicated to Greek gods, sparking outrage and setting the stage for revolt. What followed was no ordinary rebellion. It was a war for survival. In 167 BCE, a rural priest named Mattathias, a Jewish priest from Modine, refused to offer sacrifices to Greek gods and killed a royal official enforcing the decree. Fleeing to the hills with his 5 sons, including Judah Maccabee, they launched a guerrilla campaign against the Seleucid forces. After Mattathias' death, Judah Maccabee became leader of the rebels, known as the Maccabees or Hasmoneans. They fought a series of successful battles against larger Seleucid armies, led by generals such as Apollonius, Seiron, and Lysias. Major victories included the Battle of Beth Horon in 166 BCE and Emmaus in 165 BCE. Against overwhelming odds, the Maccabees waged a relentless insurgency, ambushing Seleucid patrols, storming fortresses, and reclaiming town after town. The response from the empire was brutal. Entire villages were slaughtered, families executed, and Judea burned in retribution. Yet somehow, faith endured where armies failed. The rebels recaptured Jerusalem, purified the defiled temple, and restored the altar to their god. However, fighting continued as Seleucid rulers, Antiochus IV, and later his successor Demetrius I Soter, tried to reassert control. Judah was eventually killed in battle around 160 BCE, but the revolt persisted under his brothers Jonathan Aphus and Simon Thassi. By 142 BCE, under Simon's leadership, the Seleucids officially recognized Judean independence, marking the start of the Hasmonean kingdom. The uprising cost tens of thousands of lives, but from that blood came independence and a legacy that has lasted over 2 millennia. At number 4, we fast forward to the 19th century. where we would see a rebellion that would change the path of history in India. To call it a simple sepoy mutiny is to overlook the storm that had been building for decades. By 1820, the British no longer ruled through trade, but through paramountcy, the belief that their authority should dominate all of India's political and cultural life. Indian princes were bound by subsidiary alliances, which made them dependent on British power. Then came Lord Dalhousie, Governor-General from 1848 to 1856, who expanded the empire through the doctrine of lapse, annexing any princely state without a natural heir. Kingdoms like Satara, Jhansi, and Nagpur vanished under his rule. The Brahmins, stripped of traditional lands and influence, grew resentful. British reforms and Christian missionary work fueled fears that India's religions and caste order were under attack. Dalhousie's social reforms, like the Hindu Widows' Remarriage Act of 1856, though progressive on paper, were seen as foreign interference in sacred customs. By the mid-1850s, resentment had spread from nobles and priests to the very soldiers of the East India Company. India was a volcano waiting to erupt. And in 1857, it finally did. The British Empire faced a rebellion unlike any it had ever seen. Across northern India, sepoys, Indian troops serving under the British East India Company, rose up in fury. It began with a spark. Rumors spread that the new pattern 1,853 Enfield rifle musket cartridges introduced into the Bengal Army were greased with cow tallow, offensive to Hindus, and pig lard, offensive to Muslims. To the British, it was a misunderstanding. To the sepoys, it was sacrilege. The final humiliation after years of exploitation, racism, and broken promises. The rebellion began in Meerut when soldiers refused to bite the cartridges and were imprisoned. Their comrades broke them out and marched on Delhi, declaring allegiance to the aging Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah II, a symbolic attempt to restore Indian sovereignty. What followed was a firestorm. The revolt spread like wildfire through Delhi, Kanpur, Lucknow, Jhansi, and beyond. Civilians joined the cause, local rulers switched sides, and the company's rule began to crumble. But the British struck back with a vengeance that stunned even their allies. Entire villages were burned. Prisoners were executed without trial. In places like Kanpur, massacres and reprisals turned cities into charnel grounds. The violence was staggering. Some estimates put the death toll at over 1 million, others as high as 2 million, counting famine and disease that followed in its wake. When the smoke cleared, India lay devastated, its old order shattered. The rebellion failed to restore independence, but it changed everything. The East India Company was abolished, its territories seized by the British Crown. In its place rose the British Raj, with Queen Victoria proclaimed Empress of India. It was a grim trade, the dream of freedom buried beneath empire's weight. But the memory of 1857 became the heartbeat of Indian nationalism for generations to come. Next, at number 3, we cross over to the Caribbean just over 50 years earlier, where the brutal wealth of Europe was built on sugar, chains, and human misery. In the French colony of Saint-Domingue, today's Haiti, 500,000 enslaved Africans toiled under some of the cruelest conditions in the world. It was said that a slave's average life expectancy was barely 10 years old. Alongside the British colony of Jamaica, Saint-Domingue had become one of the world's leading sugar suppliers. French engineers had built complex irrigation systems from the 1730s to boost production, and hundreds of ships sailed annually from Saint-Domingue to Bordeaux. By 1789, the colony's exports supported the livelihoods of over 1 million people in France, with millions more indirectly reliant on its wealth. Saint-Domingue was the most profitable French colony of its time. This wealth, however, came at an unimaginable human cost. Sugar, coffee, cocoa, and indigo plantations depended on the labor of enslaved Africans. In 1787 alone, roughly 20,000 slaves were shipped from Africa. Yet disease ran rampant. Yellow fever and malaria claimed the lives of at least half the newcomers within a year. Planters, seeing their workers as disposable, provided the bare minimum of food and shelter, maximizing labor while expecting death. Life under slavery was brutal and dehumanizing. Polyandry became common, as one woman might be married to several men, and rape by planters, overseers, or the planters' sons was widespread. Conditions were designed to extract maximum profit at the cost of human life, creating a pressure cooker that made rebellion inevitable. Then, in 1791, the impossible happened. Guided by leaders like Toussaint Louverture and his lieutenants, Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Henri Christophe, the rebellion rose in a wave of fury and purpose that would shake the foundations of the Atlantic world. Plantations burned. Masters were slaughtered. The French, the British, and the Spanish all tried to crush the rebellion, and all failed. The fighting was apocalyptic. Entire towns destroyed, crops razed, and disease claiming more lives than bullets. Napoleon sent an army of over 40,000 and lost nearly all of them to yellow fever and Haitian resistance. The war was fought with unmatched brutality. Massacres were committed, and vengeance flowed like blood through the cane fields. The war reached its climax on November 18, 1803, at the Battle of Vertières. The Armée Indigène, the indigenous army, led by Jean-Jacques Dessalines, dealt a decisive blow to the French forces. French General Rochambeau surrendered Cap Français, now Cap Haïtien, the last major French stronghold. With the French army gone, Haiti's independence was within reach. And on January 1st, 1804, after 13 years of war, the rebels declared the entire island independent under the Arawak-derived name of Haiti. It was the first Black republic in history, and the only known successful slave rebellion in human history that led to the founding of a state which was both free from slavery and ruled by non-whites and former captives. At number 2 is the infamous Taiping Rebellion. In human history, no rebellion matched the sheer scale, chaos, and devastation of the Taiping Rebellion. What began as one man's vision spiraled into a war that consumed an empire and left tens of millions dead. By the mid-19th century, the Qing dynasty was crumbling under famine, corruption, and humiliation from the First Opium War of 1839 to 1842. China's population had nearly doubled while farmland remained scarce. Taxes rose, and southern Hakka communities grew restless under Manchu rule. Secret societies, banditry, and rebellion simmered across the countryside. Amid this turmoil, a failed scholar named Hong Xiuquan from Guangdong claimed divine visions after repeated failure in the imperial exams. Interpreting them through Christian tracts he read in 1843, Hong believed he was the brother of Jesus, chosen to purge China of demons and corruption. With Feng Yunshan, he founded the God-worshipping society in 1844, a mix of Christianity and Chinese millenarianism. His message was electrifying: equality, communal ownership, and the destruction of the old order. To a population crushed by famine, floods, and corruption, it sounded like salvation. By 1850, Qing crackdowns turned the movement into open rebellion, sparking the cataclysmic Taiping Rebellion. By 1850, the movement had transformed into an army, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, with millions of followers. They seized vast territories across southern China and captured Nanjing, declaring it their heavenly capital. Inside the city, new laws banned opium, alcohol, gambling, and prostitution. Men and women were made equal under Taiping rule, but dissent was met with death. The Qing dynasty, already weakened by foreign wars, responded with desperation. Provincial warlords raised private armies, foreign powers supplied weapons, and for 14 long years, China bled itself dry. Entire cities changed hands multiple times, each capture marked by massacres. Crops were burned, villages annihilated, and starvation swept the countryside like wildfire. The numbers defy comprehension. 20 to 30 million people dead, more than the entire population of England and France combined at the time. In some provinces, over half the population vanished. When the rebellion was finally crushed in 1864, Nanjing was left a smoking ruin, and the dream of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom died with Hong Xiuquan, found dead amid the rubble, possibly by poison or starvation. The Taiping Rebellion left China shattered and humiliated, its people traumatized, and its rulers weakened beyond repair. It was a civil war so vast that only World War II would surpass its death toll. A rebellion not just against a dynasty, but against the entire fabric of a world that had lost its faith. And finally, at number 1, the deadliest rebellion in human history. The An Lushan Rebellion. In 755 CE, the mighty Tang Dynasty, one of China's greatest empires, faced a rebellion so vast it nearly wiped civilization from the map. The man behind it was An Lushan, a powerful general of mixed Sogdian and Turkic heritage. Once a trusted commander under Emperor Xuanzong, An controlled a massive army along the empire's northeastern frontier, but corruption was eating away at the Tang court. Xuanzong's beloved consort, Yang Guifei, and her cousin, the ambitious Yang Guozhong, dominated imperial politics, alienating generals and officials alike. When An Lushan accused Yang Guozhong of treason, the court ignored him. Enraged, he turned his army against the empire he once served. In December 755, An Lushan launched his revolt from Fanyang, modern Beijing, leading more than 150,000 soldiers south toward the capital. His forces moved swiftly, capturing Luoyang by early 756 and declaring a rival dynasty, the Yan dynasty, with himself as emperor. Within months, the mighty Tang army crumbled, and Chang'an, the imperial capital, fell. Emperor Xuanzong fled west to Sichuan, and to appease his furious troops, he ordered the execution of Yang Guozhong and the tragic strangling of Yang Guifei, whose death marked the end of the empire's golden age. But the rebellion didn't end there. The Tang regrouped under Suzong, Xuanzong's son, who allied with Uyghur cavalry and loyal generals like Guo Ziyi and Li Guangbi. Years of brutal warfare followed. Cities like Luoyang and Chang'an changed hands multiple times, and whole provinces were razed to the ground. Famine spread. Millions starved. The countryside became a wasteland haunted by soldiers and refugees. In 757, Tang and Uyghur forces retook the capitals, forcing An Lushan to retreat. But before long, he was murdered by his own son, An Qingshu, in 757 CE. The rebellion dragged on under An's successors until 763 CE, when Tang loyalists finally crushed the last remnants of the rebel forces. When it was over, the scale of devastation was almost beyond comprehension. Scholars estimate between 25 and 36 million deaths, roughly a sixth of the world's population at the time. Entire regions were depopulated, and the Tang dynasty, though it survived for another century and a half, was permanently weakened. The An Lushan rebellion ended not just an empire's golden age, but a world order. It left China scarred, divided, and forever changed. From Judea's holy uprising to China's cataclysmic civil war, from enslaved gladiators in Rome to freedom fighters in Haiti, rebellion has always been a double-edged sword, where success often depended not just on courage, but on unity, timing, and vision.